Hey everybody, Mr. Kirkwald back again today. We're in our directions for today video, which is right here. We just don't have it yet because I'm making it right now. And then we're going to walk through some metric system units. This video goes a little bit more in depth than my video will. And then I made my own video of how to measure with the metric system because we're actually going to practice that today. And that goes with this meter stick measuring check-in. So before we do that, I want to do a little bit more in our metric notes. So yesterday we went through and we filled in our metric notes, the first part of them. And so what I want you to do is in your drive, I want you to go find this document that we started yesterday. We highlighted our red stuff here. I had to unhighlight it so that you guys didn't have it, but this is where we're going to be. So if you can go find your copy of your metric notes, pause maybe, and then bring this up. So hopefully now that you're back with us, we're going to fill in the bottom portion here, this length, mass, and volume. So the cool thing about the metric system is that the words are all similar all the way across the board. And so I want to take a look at that today. So instead of knowing that you have to have a gallon and a cup and a quart and an ounce and all of those kinds of things when we're measuring, or inches, feet, miles, yards, all of those, the words are actually very similar, and it helps because then you kind of know what units you're working with. So we're going to fill in this chart together with all of the different things. You see the factors over here. So we're going to start with our center one here. And I'm actually going to, if you watch me, and you can do this too, I'm going to grab all of these prefixes because they're all going to be the same. And I'm going to Control C to copy them. And then I'm going to come down here, and if I highlight all my boxes here, I'm going to hit Control V to paste, and then it pops them all in, which is awesome. So we are working with the base unit here for length. Length, the base unit, the one that they use the most in the metric system, is going to be the meter. So instead of base, I'm going to say the meter. Okay? And then going up or going down, filling in these, if you have 10 meters, we call that a decameter. Okay? If you have 100 meters, you have a hectometer. And if you have 1,000 meters, we call that a kilometer. And I just add meter after it. So it's kilometer or kilometer, meter, and then if we go down, if you have 1/10, right? If you have 0.1 meters, that's a decimeter. And then if you have 100th of it, that's a centimeter. We talked about that yesterday. Centi means 100. And then we have a millimeter, meter, and a micrometer. So we've got all of these filled in. So I want you to have all of this filled in as well, so that you've got all of the different names that we need here. And then once you have that done, I want to kind of talk about the ones that we were really going to use for length. So when we talk about length, we're going to highlight a couple of these. The meter, we use the meter a lot. So this is going to be a common one. So I'm going to highlight it red so that I know that it's common. We also use a kilometer, which is about a mile, or it's the equivalent to a mile, a kilometer, and then we have centimeter and millimeter. The ones that I'm not highlighting, we don't use these ones very often, okay? So we just don't use micrometer, decimeter, decameter, hectometer very often, so we're not going to worry about those kinds of names, at least in our science class. The other thing I wanted to do before we move on to mass and volume is in our white space here, write down a couple of things to help us remember how long these, or to help us with the measurements so we can kind of see how long they are. So a kilometer, I'm going to abbreviate it km, okay, kilometer. A kilometer is about 2/3 of a mile, okay? So that's how long a kilometer or a kilometer is, just for some perspective for you. When I talk about a meter, so we'll just use a regular M. When I talk about a meter, a meter is about, we'll say about up to your hip, from the floor to your hip, up to your hip. So if you measure from the floor to your hip, that's about how big a meter is, okay? So when we're talking about meters, that's about how big it is. When we're talking about centimeters, cm, centimeters. A centimeter is about the width of your pinky finger. So we'll write that in just so that we have some perspective here. So it's about the width of your pinky finger. And then a millimeter is about the size of pencil lead. So if you have a mechanical pencil and you twist out that lead or you push out that lead, that's about how big a millimeter is. It's very, very small. So just some perspective here before we move on to our next part about how big these measurements are, because we're going to work mostly with meters in this class. So again, for mass, even though we're going to change into grams, the prefixes are going to stay the same. So I'm going to go in here and just paste it again, kilo, hecto, deca, and then I'm going to change my base unit this time to gram. And then it's the same thing all the way up. It's a decagram, it's a hectogram, it's a kilogram, it's a decigram, it's a centigram, it's a milligram, oh, come on, and it's a microgram. Now, for mass, we use even less of our units here, so I want to just highlight the ones that we do use. So we're going to talk about grams a lot, and then we'll talk about kilograms and milligrams. So we'll use all three of these. These are the three big ones. A gram is super small. A gram and a pound are not equivalent to each other. A gram is about the weight of one paper clip. So if you take a paper clip and hold it in your hand, that's about 1 gram. And then for a kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So it's about as heavy as most of your textbooks. Those Study Sync ones are a little bit bigger, but a regular textbook is about 2 pounds or so. So a kilogram is about that heavy, just so that you have that. And then for volume, we're going to do the same thing. That's why I love the metric system so much, is because the prefixes stay the same. If you have 1,000 liters, it's a kiloliter. If you have 1,000 meters, it's a kilometer. If you have 1,000 grams, it's a kilogram. And so it's just nice. We'll fill these in: liter, liter, hectoliter. Oh my gosh. Ah! There you go. Decaliter. It's super nice that these are all the same all the time. Oh, geez. My fingers are mistyping today. So I want you to make sure that you're filling in this chart just like I am. Milliliter is really hard because there's all the I's and the L's in there. When we write that out, we usually use the abbreviation, just ML for that one. A microliter. And then for volume, we actually use even less of these words more commonly. The ones that are highlighted are the most common ones that you're going to hear. If you see other ones, you might see a decigram at some point, but usually not outside of the classroom. It's not a very common thing. But for volume, we're going to talk about liters. And 4 liters make 1 gallon. So if you have 4 liters, that's 1 gallon. And then we have milliliters here. A milliliter is pretty small. It's maybe kind of a little bit bigger than a drop of water. So it's not a very large amount. So that is a milliliter. So we've got liters and milliliters, and that's it. That's the only things that we use for volume. Kiloliters, not really in science. We usually just use these. So now that I have this filled in, we've got our kind of range so that we know what is going on with all of them. I'm going to go back to my Schoology page, and then you just watched this directions video. Your job today is going to watch this metric units, so it explains a little bit more, kind of like what I just did. How to measure with metric units, it's going to dive a little bit more into how you're actually going to use your ruler or meter stick in order to measure. And then here our assignment, meter stick measuring check. When I click on that, it's going to say click here, and then it says scroll down to reading a metric ruler. So we don't have to go all the way through all of them. We're just going to do a couple of them. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to take a couple screenshots when I get done. So I'm going to go blah, 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 waiting for it to load. So this stuff here we don't need. Accuracy and precision we don't need. scrolling, keep scrolling, reading a metric ruler right here. So there's a little mini lesson if you'd like, if my video wasn't very clear for you. But then down here it's you try. So it says look at the ruler above, enter each letter that corresponds. So I can make it a little bit bigger by hitting that plus sign. And then I'm going to take a look and I'm going to try and find 1.6 centimeters. So each one of these little teeny tiny lines is a millimeter, and then I need 1.6 centimeters. So I'm going to take a look at where that might be and then put the corresponding letter into there. Ah! Okay, that's all. Bye.